Now let's look at another component of your non-specific or innate immune system. And this one is going to be on a topic called inflammation. So let's talk about what inflammation is, what are the signs of it, what are the beneficial effects for inflammation, and what happens during this whole process. So let's look at inflammation. And first, how does inflammation get initiated? Well, inflammation can be initiated by a variety of different things. It can be trauma, you cut yourself, okay? It can be a bacterial viral infection, a fungal infection, anything along those lines, allergies, it can be irritating chemicals. So a number of different things can actually result in the inflammatory response. So what are the benefits or what are the beneficial effects of inflammation, and why do we want it? Well, we want it in at least more of a short-term acute setting. We don't like chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation has more problems associated with it. So what we want to talk about here, let's just stick with the acute, short-term, short-lasting inflammation. So the benefits of inflammation in this case, the first one is it's basically we want to have inflammation to prevent the spread of the damaging agent to nearby tissues. So let's say we have a bacterial infection. We don't want that infection to then spread to the surrounding tissues, okay? So that's the first one is going to be prevent the spread. Okay. The second one we're going to be looking at is it's going to be removal of cellular debris or the bacteria or the pathogen, the damaging agent. We want to get rid of that or isolate it, cap it off so it doesn't spread. So when you cap it off, now we need to get rid of it. So let's remove debris. Okay, debris can be, again, if you cut yourself, you are going to have damaged or dead cells. If you have bacteria in the area, you're going to have damaged or dead bacteria. All of those need to be removed from the area. The third thing at this point, what we want to do is we want to signal or alert your adaptive immunity. So alert adaptive immunity. Okay, so this is basically what happens. My other videos that talk about adaptive immunity will go into this much more detail, but adaptive immunity starts off with innate immunity. So innate immunity will say, hey, I don't know what you are, but I'm going to eat you, I'm going to kill you. And your adaptive immunity sees it and says, I don't recognize it. Let's develop an immune response to this just in case this comes around in the future. Okay, this is the whole purpose behind vaccines. We inject a foreign agent in your body. Your body recognizes it as foreign, kills it, posts it on a cell. In comes your adaptive immunity and says, hey, let's build up an immune response for this in case we come across this in the future. Okay. The last thing, let's say you cut yourself. Well, we need to repair this area. So if you have damaged tissue, dead tissue, we need to heal or repair that area. So those are your beneficial effects to this. Now when you have inflammation, there are 4 cardinal signs to inflammation. Some books or some references will refer to them as 5 different ones. And I'll point out your 4 primary ones and then throw in the 5th one at the very end in case you're ever asked that information. So cardinal signs. And those cardinal signs, your first one is going to be redness. Okay, redness is basically going to be associated with increased blood that comes to that area. We'll talk about that shortly, okay? Then you also have heat. Well, heat is directly associated with that redness. Blood is going to carry not only white blood cells and the other chemicals that you need, but blood is a great conduit to transport heat. And when you have increased blood flow to an area, you're naturally going to have that area to be warmer. So you're going to have heat. We're going to have swelling. And then we're going to have pain. Okay, and we'll talk about these last two here shortly. First, we'll jump in on the redness and heat when we talk about chemical releases. Now, those are your four primary ones. Your last one that you will see in some text is loss of function. I'm not a big fan of this one personally. I just think this is encompassed in the previous four. Okay, if you have an if you sprain your ankle, that's going to be trauma, so you're going to start an inflammatory response. Okay, yeah, you're going to have redness and swelling. Just imagine a sprained ankle. You can see how it's swelled. It's going to be hot. It's going to be red, and it's going to have pain. Well, loss of function is you're not going to walk on it. So that makes sense. Now, some people will say that loss of function is a sign because that aids the healing process. Potato, tomato, it doesn't matter, okay? But those are your basic signs of, or your cardinal signs of inflammation. Definitely know those because you will see those obviously in my class, but pathophysiology, you're going to see it. You're going to see it in your nursing programs. You're going to see it on your nursing boards. So be aware of this process. So let's look at what is your initial step to the inflammatory process, okay? So you've damaged the tissue. This is what's triggering inflammation. So what starts inflammation aside from your initial problem? And we have release of inflammatory chemicals. So release of inflammatory chemicals. Okay. And what this would be is if you damage a tissue, one of the cells, and there's a variety of different chemicals, but one of them that you've heard of in the past is histamine. Okay? If you're in an allergy season, you take an antihistamine. But histamine is what we're talking about in this case. Now, going back to the chapter on blood, one of the white blood cells that releases histamine is a basophil, also heparin. But basophils release histamine. A cell that is very similar to a basophil, but in connective tissue, is a mast cell. So a mast cell, M-A-S-T, is similar to a basophil, but it's located in connective tissue. They release histamine as well. So let me just write down histamine here. And let me just put in mast cell on that one, just to give you some kind of correlation on this one. So what's histamine do? Histamine is a vasodilator. Vasodilation brings more blood to the area, so therefore you've got redness. Brings more blood to the area, therefore you've got heat. Okay? Histamine also attracts other white blood cells to the area. So if you have an infection, you want more white blood cells to come to that area to help fight off that. Other chemicals, kinins. We're going to have prostaglandins. And you've heard me say this one before, and we're going to touch on it in another video. Complement. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that shortly. This is going to be a big one we're going to talk about. Now, all of these inflammatory chemicals cause vasodilation, or they cause the first two signs, or that's what's causing the first two signs of inflammation: redness and heat. So they're going to cause vasodilation. With the blood, you got the redness. With the blood, you have the heat. Okay? So now what is causing this swelling and pain? So when you vasodilate something, you're bringing more blood to that area, but you are also, the chemicals are also making the capillaries leakier. Okay? And that is basically going to be increase the permeability of a capillary. So go back when we were talking about the blood vessels and we're talking about the bulk flow through the capillaries, whether it stays in the blood vessel or goes into the interstitial spaces. That's what we're talking about here. If you make that capillary leakier, more permeable, then more fluid gets into the interstitial space. Now, it's not just more fluid. Because it's leakier, we're making those holes that the water or the fluid would come out of. We are also allowing other white blood cells. We're also allowing other proteins to get into the interstitial space. That causes swelling or edema in that area, okay? And having the proteins is a good thing. Having the increased fluid in the interstitial space is good, because then that excess fluid that's in the interstitial space then is swept into your lymphatic system, where your lymph nodes can filter out cellular debris, bacteria, and all of those things, and then also gets your immune system triggered in the adaptive side. So that's going to be this. So the last one, where's the pain coming from in this case? So we did redness and heat. We did swelling. Now, where's pain? Well, if we have increased fluid buildup in an area, and that presses on nerves because you just got more fluid, and it's pressing on nerve endings, that can cause pain. If you hurt your shoulder, and I come around and say, hey, poke, 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 you're going to say, ow, that hurts. That's the pain, okay? The fluid is building up. That puts pressure on nerve endings. That causes pain. Now, the loss of function, again, if you have swelling and pain, you're not going to want to use it. You want to immobilize the area, which then diminishes the swelling, or initiates the healing process. So let me stop here right now so this video doesn't get too long, and I will pick up on how phagocytes are mobilized to the area.